They say that no one comes back the same after seeing death up close. But what if someone wakes up saying that already died inside the hospital itself? Today, you will learn about the case that Aurora Hospital tried to erase from its records. Press play, subscribe, and activate the bell, because some stories shouldn't be remembered. My name is Elisa, and if you're listening to this, it's because someone finally opened the brown folder they left on my bed. The first thing I remember isn't the cracked ceiling nor the stomach-churning smell of ether. It's the cold on the wrist, a metallic damp cold, as if I'd slept in a place where no one is in a hurry to warm the living. When I managed to focus, I saw the hospital bracelet. Patient, Elisa M., 28 years old, admission 0314. The date was correct, but the time, I was sure it didn't exist. I remember having closed one's eyes in the emergency room hallway with a harsh light in my face and hurried voices discussing my blood pressure. 60/40. It won't hold. 1 more milligram. I remember long whistle that went through everything and a dry, emotionless phrase, note the time. Someone covered my face with a rough cloth. I don't know how much time passed, minutes, hours, or a viscous eternity, but when I woke up, nobody celebrated. Nobody shouted back. Only the wall clock made Atticold, and the nurse who changed the serum avoided looking into my eyes. "You were under observation," she said, as if concocting a lie in a hurry. "You slept soundly." I tried to laugh, but my throat came up with taste of iron. I asked for water. She pretended not to hear. As I pulled back the sheet, I saw a purple shadow on the top of her foot, right where they hold the label of those who have no return, a whitish circle like a tape mark. When I asked what it was, the nurse froze, smiled too briefly and said, "Hard mattress, same brand." Minutes later, they pushed my gurney into another room. Down the hall, Aurora. Hospital, it didn't look like a place for the living. Fluorescent lamps had a blue fever, and there was sold plates with wing names that did not match the reception map. Pavilion C, Ward 12, Retention Room. On each door, a number was filmed by peeling paint. The stretcher stopped in front of the room 307, but the taped sign said 302. "They changed the numbering," the stretcher bearer explained without me asking. He wasn't wearing a badge. Nobody was. In the new room, there was 2 beds. The one by the window, broken and cold. The one on the wall, mine. On a plastic chair, someone was waiting for me, my mum. Her face was too normal for someone who had received the right news about a daughter at risk. A trained, almost bureaucratic normality. She held my hand over the blanket and said softly, "Everything will be okay, my daughter." But what came next, it wasn't a hug, was a protocol silence, the kind you get at a wake when someone walks in and you don't know whether to greet them. I asked her the time. She replied with data. When I laughed weakly and repeated the question, she squeezed my hand a little tighter and looked away at the switched-off television. I asked for my cell phone. They said he was in the stabilization room. I asked for my medical records. They said I was on committee. I asked for a mirror. They said the hospital doesn't provide it. I just wanted to see my own face to make sure the skin was still responded to the world. Instead, they brought me a tray of warm soup, 2 broken cookies, and a glass of water that was shaking in the nursing technician's hands. I tried to joke, "If I'm alive, you could do better." She didn't find it funny. On the wall, a notice board with old clippings. It brought strange rules. Visiting hours, variable. Call a doctor just by pressing the button. Do not walk in the corridors without authorization. And the worst of them, avoid questions about other patients. Below, a yellowed newspaper clipping, "Hospital expands technical area." The photo showed a low building behind the main one, its windows darkened. The caption read, "Adaptation to new protocols." Protocol. Of what, I wondered. if there was barely soap in the bathrooms. When the doctor came in, I recognized the voice before the face. It was he who said, "Note the time, tall, lab coat too clean for that place, thin hands." Dr. Afonso. He smiled like someone who learned to smile by observing others. "Elisa, you had a significant hemodynamic event, but you responded, well, now it's time for rest, hydration and tests." I asked him to explain event. He offered a broad term that fits everything and says nothing. Instability. I asked for my medical records. He said, "Is being consolidated." I asked to call my brother. "After neurological evaluation." That's when I noticed the brown folder on the table with my last name written in black pen, 4 extra letters, a name that is not mine. "You got my record wrong," I said. The doctor looked slowly at the file, then at me, and replied as if pointing out the obvious, "The names here always were correct." My mother opened her mouth to say something, but backed away. I reached over, grabbed the folder, and pulled hard. Inside were stamped pages, some with thick black lines, as if they had hidden things. In one of them I read, "O.R.O. protocol," followed by empty fields and a rundown stamp, "Done." Was it my handwriting? No. It was someone else's handwriting, signed without asking me. The doctor took the folder from my hand with a polite and firm gesture. "Don't tire yourself. Your brain needs rest to organize the memory." Organize? My memory didn't need help. I remembered the sheet covering my face. I remembered the zipper noise. I remembered pushing stretchers into a windowless place. I remembered the cold on my wrist, the same cold that I still felt. When Afonso left, my mother said she was going to get coffee. I watched the window. Outside, the sky was the color of old rain, and a corner of the roof leaked in steady drips. I thought I was alone, until I heard a whisper from beside the empty bed. "You weren't on the list to come back." I turned with a jerk. The chair next to me was empty. The whisper seemed born from the backrest, or from the space between the curtain and the wall. From the hallway came the sound of a metal cart with crooked wheels, dragging as if it didn't want to arrive. The doorknob turned a millimeter. I took a deep breath, ready to scream. But no one came in. Only the smell, a sweet and sour smell, a mixture of formaldehyde and stale flowers, slipped through the crack and filled the room. In that second, I realized 2 things that don't make sense when you're alive. The first is that my body was not hungry despite the untouched soup. The second is that a mosquito landed on my arm without stinging me, as if the skin didn't offer blood. I tapped lightly. The mosquito flew away and returned to the same spot, insistent, curious, as if he were not sure if it was still a body. I felt the urgency to get up. The board said not to go out, but the bell was silent. I hung the IV on the hook and put my feet on the floor. The purple mark on my foot burned. I walked to the door and put my ear to it. Long footsteps coming and going, a radio hissing garbled words, a joyless laugh. I opened the door a crack. The hallway was poorly lit, with shadows that did not belong to things. On the left, the room 305 had a license plate 303. On the right, a handwritten notice, "No trespassing, technical sector." But for 2 seconds, as the bulb flickered, I saw what was there. Back from the plate, an old metallic sign with deep letters. I only had time to read 2 words before the light becomes stable again. The 2 words I read were necro room. The radio crackled again. Someone said, "Transfer of 28." And another voice answered, "No, 28 is already gone." Without knowing why, I looked at my bracelet. In the corner, in tiny letters, was a number that wasn't a number, nor a registration, nor anything I recognized. 28. I closed the door slowly. When I turned back to the bed, the brown folder was no longer on the table. In its place, a small envelope, brown, with no sender. I opened it with my finger. Inside was a single token, thin, slightly damp, with a blue stamped edge. At the top, the same neat handwriting as Dr. Afonso death certificate. In the patient field, my name no error. In the time field, 0314, and in the signature field, a long slanted line made by someone in a hurry. You may think it's the delusion of someone who's been through life, but explain if you know why. The paint was still fresh, and why, outside, a metal cart stopped right at my door, with a black zipper moving on its own. The envelope with the death certificate sat on the table for too long. I tried to convince myself it was a filing error, but the date and time matched what I remembered hearing when everything went dark. 0314, the number that haunts me to this day. I folded the paper, hid it inside my pillow, and pretended to be asleep. Sometimes you have to appear unconscious to understand who's truly awake. Hours later, the door creaked. I heard the same metal cart dragging. Someone stopped at my door, took a deep breath and entered. Light steps, controlled, as if afraid of being heard. I pretended to snore softly, but my feet stopped beside the bed. I heard the dry sound of metal hitting glass, and a click. When I opened my eyes a crack, I saw a small flashlight streaking the air. It was a woman in grey coat, no badge, hair tied up haphazardly. She looked at the tubes, the IV, then at me. And then, without hesitation, she pulled an empty syringe from the pocket. My heart nearly ripped out of my chest. I held my breath and remained still. The woman took the IV, opened a side cap, and inserted the needle, as if administering medication but without rushing. The liquid inside the syringe, it was not transparent, era greyish, dense, with something that seemed suspended powder. She applied it slowly, then removed the syringe, cleaned the area with gauze, and left the room. Without looking back, without closing the door properly. I got up and went to the IV stand. The liquid was cloudy, as if there was smoke inside. The name on the label was covered by black tape, but underneath, in the light of the hallway flashlight, a scratched word could be read. Lucid. I paused for a moment. This seemed like a cruel joke. I was being medicated for become lucid, or to stop being. I decided I needed to get out of there. The hospital was asleep, but not at rest. There were sounds that didn't belong to machines or people. Knocks behind the wall, from the inside out. Rhythmic intervals, 3 at a time, like code. I tried counting. 1, 2, 3. Silence. Then 3 more. I engraved that sound in my head. I opened the door and peered into the hallway. The lamp was flickering. The radio was still hissing. The smell of ether and rust came around a bend. The technical sector sign was cracked. I walked barefoot, the icy floor scraping the bones of my feet. At the end of the hallway, a door with little window covered with brown paper. I pushed, locked. Underneath, white light flashed in short intervals, as if someone were taking pictures. Suddenly, a metallic crack echoed behind me. I froze. It was the stretcher-bearer without badge standing in the shadows. His face was partially covered by an old stained surgical mask. "Mrs. Elisa, you shouldn't be outside the ward," he murmured. "What did they put in my IV?" I asked, trying to sound firm. He took a deep breath, looked at the floor, and answered very quietly, "You shouldn't be here yet." Before I could ask what that meant, he turned and pushed the cart back, the sound of the wheels squeaking down the hallway. A paper fell from his lab coat pocket and floated to my feet. I picked it up. It was an autopsy form. Name: Field Elisa M. Campo Status. Completed. I went back to my room, trembling. I sat on the bed, looked at the light switch, and saw a shadow moving in the reflection, even with the door locked. A dull sound came from the wall behind the headboard. 3 knocks. Silence. 3 knocks. Silence. I decided to answer. I knocked 3 times, too. For a few seconds, the silence seemed to swallow me. Then came the answer. 2 knocks and a muffled whisper, so faint it seemed to come from the other side of the concrete. "Don't look at the medical records." My entire body froze. I looked at the desk. The brown folder that had disappeared was back, sealed, with a new red stamp. Reviewed by the O.R.O. committee. That acronym again. O.R.O. I opened the folder. The pages were the same, but now they had my notes written in pencil. Only I had never done that. Short, repeated phrases. They woke me up. I didn't sign it. Waking up hurts. Below is a quick drawing of something that looked like a human heart with tubes coming out connected to a glass cylinder. Around it, scribbles that formed letters. Operational retained body. That was it. O.R.O. At that moment, I realized that the hospital wasn't just treating patients, it was maintaining functional bodies, perhaps between life and death, and I could be one of them. I heard footsteps approaching. I closed the briefcase and hid it under the mattress. The light in the hallway grew brighter, and someone knocked twice on the door. "Doctor." Afonso's voice came calmly, coldly. "Elisa, we need to adjust your dosage. Open it, please." I thought about feigning sleep. I thought about screaming. But what paralyzed me was something else. The window reflected the hallway, and in the shadow of the door I saw 2 figures, the doctor and myself, standing with the bracelet on her right wrist. And what about the bed? I also had a bracelet, on the left wrist. The sound of the knock on the door echoed in his chest like a drum underwater. 2 knocks, silence, held breath. The reflection in the window still showed 2 shadows behind the door, Dr. Afonso and someone with my same body shape. I backed into the corner of the wall, not knowing what was scarier, the idea of a copy or the fear that I myself, if it weren't the original. "Elisa, open up. You're at risk." His voice was too calm for someone worried. I was speechless. The sound of keys mingled with hurried footsteps in the hallway. When the doorknob turned, I ran to the bathroom. I locked it and pressed my ear to the door. I heard the creak of a gurney being moved, a chair scraping the floor, and then total silence. On the other side, the air seemed to change. It was as if the room had been emptied of sound. No creaking, no footsteps, not even the ticking of the clock. I waited minutes, maybe hours. When I finally gathered my courage, I slowly opened it. The room was as it had been before, but the sheet on the next bed was disturbed. And on the pillow, a small black recorder. I pressed play. The voice was mine. "If you're hearing this, it means you've woken up again. Don't trust Dr. Afonso. O.R.O. is not a treatment. It's a cycle. They call it controlled reactivation." The sound hissed and the recording continued. "When the body dies, they induce a direct electrical response in the nervous system and observe the behavior. They don't resuscitate people, keep consciences trapped. The test is to know how many times the mind can bear to wake up, believing it is alive." I dropped the recorder. My entire body tingled. The voice was truly mine, the same cadence, the pauses, even the slight accent I never notice. If it was a joke, it was too cruel. If it was real, then I was already dead. And I was, being revived as part of an experiment. I looked around. There were tiny cameras in the corners of the ceiling, hidden beneath the paint. I ran to the outlet and unplugged the IV. The cloudy liquid drained slowly, as if resisting. On the bottom corner of the stand, a nearly faded label, property of the O.R.O. department. The emergency bell still didn't work. I stepped onto the cold floor and went to the window. I tried to open it, but it was stuck. Outside, a metal structure connected the building to another block, with a barely visible sign, Organic Responses Laboratory, the same name as the initials O.R.O. I heard voices in the hallway. A group was approaching. I pulled back the curtain, hid the recorder in my pillow and went back. To bed. The door burst open. 3 people entered. Dr. Afonso, a nurse with her face covered, and a short man in a brown lab coat. The latter held a clipboard and an amber vial. "The patient has regained consciousness," the short man said. "Reorientation protocol?" Afonso nodded. "Administer 10 ml. If there is resistance, complete sedation." I got up on impulse. "What are they doing to me? I already know what O.R.O is." The nurse stepped forward, syringe in hand. "Calm down, Elisa. This is for your own good." I stepped back, hitting the headboard, my heart racing. "You're keeping dead people alive. This isn't treatment, it's torture." Afonso took a deep breath and spoke with the serenity of a man who doesn't believe in his own crime. "Elisa, you died 12 days ago. Your brain responded to the O.R.O stimulus and began producing conscious waves again. We just studied the phenomenon." I felt the ground disappear. 12 days. I had been veiled, recorded, and now I was there, speaking, feeling, remembering. "That's impossible." "Nothing is impossible when you have enough energy," he replied. "You are living proof of that, or almost living proof." The nurse approached. I retreated to the bathroom and closed the door. They knocked and knocked, but the latch held. On the floor I noticed a loose ventilation grate. I pulled hard. Behind it, a narrow, dark tunnel with wires and a musty smell, a choice with no way back. I stuck my arm in, then my whole body in. I heard the sound of the door being forced open. "Elisa, you don't understand. If you leave there, your body won't sustain consciousness." I ignored it. I dragged myself through the tunnel. Metal cut into my knees. The air was hot and heavy. The light faded behind me. With every meter, the sounds of the hospital grew distant, until a low hum began to fill the space, as if dozens of machines were breathing in unison. The tunnel ended in an iron grate. I pushed it with my shoulder and fell into a room. Lit by cold white lights, in the center rows of stretchers covered with grey sheets. I approached one. On the foot, a small metal plaque, "Patient 27, reactivated." The sheet moved. I pulled slowly. Underneath it, myself. The identical face, the same scar on the chin, but expressionless. Eyes half closed, skin pale and cold. The monitor beside it blinked slowly, and a label stuck to it read, "Test 28, under observation." I looked at my bracelet. 28. The autopsy report was correct. I was the next. Experiment. Behind me, the buzzing grew louder, and for the first time I realized voices whispering names, not of patients but of numbers. 22, 25, 28, all in chorus, as if the hospital was calling your dead back. The hum of the machine seemed to come from the ground. Each footstep echoed, as if I were stepping on a giant lung still trying to breathe. The rows of stretchers stretched to the end of the room, all covered in grey sheets, lined up like horizontal tombs. In the air, the sweet smell of formaldehyde mixed with something metallic, old blood perhaps. I approached the second gurney. Beneath the sheet, the outline of a small body. I slowly pulled back the fabric. A woman, maybe 30, with electrode wires attached to her shaved head. On the monitor, the line wasn't straight. It wavered faintly, like an echo of life. The chest rose and fell, but the eyes were sewn shut. Behind her, shelves filled with glass jars, their labels stained. O.R.O. Series 21, Series 25, Series 28. Inside each bottle, something that looked like fragments of human tissue floating in amber liquid. I felt my throat close up. This wasn't medical research. It was storage of pieces of people. A male voice echoed from the rusty speaker. "Test 28 on the move. Initiate containment." My body froze. Lights began to flash in sequence, and a muffled siren filled the air. I tried to run, but the automatic doors closed one by one, blocking my path. Only one opening remained, a metal staircase that led even lower. I went down. The steps were damp, covered in mold. At the end, a narrow corridor with worn tile walls and a trickle of water running down the middle. Metal plaques marked the sections: cryogenics, reactivation, Descartes. When I passed the last one, the cold cut into my bones. The room was large, circular, with glass tanks lit from within. Inside each one, bodies floated in clear liquid, connected to tubes that pulsed like artificial veins. One of the tanks was numbered 27, the previous Elisa. The next, empty, was numbered 28. On the control panel was a screen with graphs, lines, and a sequence of files named by date. I tapped one of them. A video appeared. I lay on the stretcher, eyes open, as Dr. Afonso spoke into the camera. Day 12. Subject 28 presents cerebral response even after complete discontinuation of support. O.R.O procedure validated. Reactivation scheduled for 0314. The image cut off. In the corner of the screen, a log: dissociated consciousness, unstable. My whole body shivered. I was seeing my own post-mortem on tape. A metallic clang echoed behind me. The badgeless porter appeared at the door. His face was pale, his eyes sunken. The same man who had told me, "You shouldn't be here." He held an old keychain and whispered, "If you want to leave, there's a way out through the freight elevators. But you need to go now. They know you've reactivated too much." I ran after him. We passed ventilation. Ducts, cables, and rusty doors. The alarms grew louder. Suddenly, a female voice echoed through the speakers. "Containment protocol initiated. Test 28 evading. Neutralize." "What is neutralize?" I asked. The stretcher-bearer didn't answer. He quickened his pace. At the end of the hallway were double doors bearing the hospital symbol. He typed something on a panel, and the lock clicked. When he pushed, a cold draft rushed in, along with a smell of old rain. On the other side, a dark warehouse filled with wooden boxes and equipment covered in sheets. In the corner, an old elevator with an iron grate. He pulled me there. "Go up and don't look back. Come with me." "I can't. I've already failed." Before I could ask what he meant by that, his face started to change. His skin wrinkled, his eyes sunk. He mumbled something that sounded like a prayer and fell to his knees. Within seconds, his body collapsed, turning into a pale mass, like melted wax. Inside the lab coat, a metal label, Test 14, discontinued. The elevator creaked as I pulled the lever. I went up. The sound of the old engine mingled with distant shouts, alarms, and running footsteps. When the doors opened, I was in a floor that did not exist on the map. Short hallways, flickering lights, boarded-up windows. On the floor, yellowed papers. I picked one up. The title read, Aurora Hospital, Official Organic Restoration Program, O.R.O, Phase 3, Testing in Persistent Consciousness. The following lines described everything: induced deaths, controlled resuscitations, memory transfer, and attempted body reuse. The hospital didn't treat people. It recycled consciences. I heard a noise. I turned and saw Dr. Afonso at the end of the hallway, calm, holding a clipboard. "Elisa, you need to understand. If you run away, your body will shut down. You've been forcibly reactivated. Your brain can't handle more than 72 hours out of the loop. I'd rather die than go back to that stretcher." He took a step. He smiled. "You've said that before, the other times." The air was lacking. "Other times?" Afonso lifted the clipboard and showed a file marked with dates: 28-1, 28-2, 28-3. "You're on your 4th reactivation. You always run away. You always come back. It's a cycle, but this time, you've started to remember." The entire hallway shook. The light bulbs burst. And for the first time, Dr. Afonso lost his smile. From downstairs, a deafening sound, the tanks breaking one by one, and a voice multiplied in echoes, rising through the ducts. "Elisa, come with us." The elevator behind me descended on its own, its lights flashing red. The floor began to vibrate. The hospital seemed to breathe and close your own veins. I ran without knowing where I was going, but I swear one thing. As I fled, I saw the other Elisas walking down the hallway, pale, slow, looking at me, all with numbered bracelets, all with the same face, and all whispering together, "You are the last." I ran, without looking back. The other versions of me echoed in the hallway, slow footsteps, the sound of bracelets clicking, a murmur that sounded like a prayer. At every turn, the hospital changed shape. Doors that once led to rooms now opened onto blank walls. Signs shifted, and the sound of machines seemed to follow me, as if the entire building knew where I was. I found a fire escape. The lights flickered at short intervals, and between one flash and the next I saw faces in the windows, watching in silence. I climbed the steps, panting, until I reached a rusty metal door with a sign, "Emergency Exit, Restricted Use." I pushed with my shoulder, but it wouldn't budge. I tried again. A snap echoed, and the latch broke. The air that rushed in was cold and heavy. Outside, a starless night. No sounds of city life, cars, or life. Only the distant rustling of trees and the hiss of wind passing through iron structures. I staggered out. What I saw paralyzed me. Aurora Hospital was not in an urban area. It was surrounded by dense forest and wire fences. There was no gate, no road, just a dirt path that disappeared into the mist. I took a few steps. The wet grass stuck to my feet. The silence was so thick that even my breathing seemed too loud. In the distance, red lights flashed. Maybe cars, I thought. I ran toward them, but the closer I got, the more I realized the lights, they didn't come from outside. And yes, underground small openings in the ground pulsed as if the ground were breathing. One of them opened as I stepped near. A jet of hot air escaped, along with the unmistakable smell of formaldehyde. Inside, metal tubes spiraled downward. I memorized a line from the recorder. "The hospital is the cycle." Maybe nothing would end out there, because there was no outside. Behind me, slow footsteps. I turned. Dr. Afonso was there, covered in dust, his lab coat torn. "Do you really think there's a surface, Elisa? That anyone leaves here?" "I saw the forest, the lights!" I shouted, my voice hoarse. He gave a half smile. "This is all part of the reorientation process. The brain needs to believe there is an escape. This is how we measure how much consciousness still resists." I took 2 steps back, feeling the ground give way beneath my feet. "I don't believe you." "Of course not. None of the previous 27 believed it." The earth shook. Behind him, the trees began to writhe, as if made of fabric and wire. The sky flashed, a bright white light, and everything shook. As the light faded, I realized the hospital was closer. He hadn't fallen behind. He had, if moved. The windows lit up in sequence, like eyes opening in the darkness, and inside each one I saw human silhouettes, some stopped, others watching me. "You belong here," said Afonso, approaching. "The body belongs to the hospital, and the hospital belongs to the body." I approached the opening in the floor. The hot air pushed me back. Below, I saw a room full of tanks identical to those. Underground, all with bodies connected by cables. In the center, a pulsating structure of metal and flesh. The heart of Aurora, literally. Pipes dipped into it, pumping a golden liquid that rose to the walls and disappeared. The sound of voices returned, now louder, coming from all sides. "Waking up hurts. Waking up hurts. Waking up hurts." The ground vibrated, cracking. I ran to the wire gate and tried to climb over. When I touched the top, a jolt of electricity coursed through me. I fell, backward. Dr. Afonso approached, his shadow growing until it completely covered me. "Elisa, your body is failing. You have a choice. Go back to bed and stay alive, or try to run away and disappear forever." If I go back, I will die again. No, it will just restart. He held out his hand, the same one that signed my death certificate. I hesitated. Then I heard another sound coming from the forest. Steps, but not his. A female figure emerged from the mist, hair loose, wearing a patient's clothing. Her translucent skin revealed bluish veins. It was Elisa, 27. She looked at me, then at him, and said in a trembling voice, "Don't listen to him. We didn't die. We were erased." The ground opened up completely. Mist rose. Afonso stepped back and I was pulled into the opening. As I fell, I saw the hospital folding in on itself, like an organism feeding on its own body. The voices merged into a shout, 28, complete. The impact was dry, total darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was back on the stretcher, the same cracked ceiling, the same clock ticking. Row 314. A nurse adjusted the IV, smiling. "Welcome back, Elisa. Did you sleep well?" I looked at the bracelet. The number was no longer 28. Now it was 29. The sound of the heart monitor was the same as always, that bip constant, cold, mechanical. The smell of ether had filled the air again. I was back in the room, but something was different. The lamplight flickered in short intervals and between flashes. Shadows on the walls, they didn't move with me. They seemed to live on their own. I tried to get up, but my body didn't respond. My muscles were stiff, as if they'd been glued to the mattress. I looked at my arm. The IV was running again, and inside the hose, the liquid wasn't clear. It was golden, viscous, pulsating as if it had life. Across the room, the door was open, and outside the hallway was empty. No noise, no human voice, just the hospital hum breathing. "Welcome back," said a familiar voice. Dr. Afonso appeared in the doorway, his lab coat impeccable, his gloves too clean for someone who had just performed an experiment. "You have endured longer than anyone else. With each reactivation, you remember a little more. This means the process is close to completion." "Complete what?" My voice came out hoarse, scratching my throat. He smiled with the calm of someone explaining the inevitable. "The replacement. When the real body wears out, the hospital creates another. The O.R.O. doesn't reanimate. It transferred." I tried to deny it, but he turned a portable monitor toward me. The screen showed other bodies with my face, connected to cables, some motionless, others trembling. Beneath each one, a date and a number, 25, 26, 27, 28, and now 29. These bodies are nothing more than vessels. The mind is the real experiment. You're the only one who doesn't completely erase after each reboot. That's why we keep trying. Trying what? The eternal, e-consciousness. The sentence hung heavy in the air. Outside, a crack made the ceiling vibrate. Afonso looked up, worried for the first time. The sound of breaking glass came from the hallway. The lights flickered brighter, and a deep rumbling sound filled the building, as if something were dragging itself along the foundations. I ran my gaze to the window pane and saw the other Elisas, all of them, standing in the courtyard, looking up. Some without eyes, others with tubes protruding from their skin, all motionless, their heads tilted toward me. The ground around them pulsed, breathed. The hospital seemed vivo, literally. Afonso approached. "They shouldn't be awake." The light failed completely. Bip from the monitor became a continuous sound. And suddenly, the silence was broken by a human scream coming from the lower floor. That kind of scream that isn't pain, but absolute despair. Afonso ran into the hallway, shouting orders. "Shut down the tanks! Now! Shut them all down!" Darkness filled the room. In the pitch black, I felt something cold slide down my wrist. I touched it and realized the serum had come loose. The golden liquid dripped onto the floor and dripped towards the door, as if it had a will of its own. When I looked at the ceiling, I noticed cracks growing, and between them, thin, pulsating veins descending like roots. The entire hospital began to vibrate, emitting a sound that was no longer mechanical. It was organic, like a beating heart. I staggered out of the room. In the hallway, chaos. Nurses were running around, some faceless, others shouting names that didn't exist. Alarms blared, but the sound was muffled, distorted as if coming from underwater. On a gurney, I saw the body of Elisa, 27, with her eyes open and her mouth sewn shut. She slowly turned her face and looked at me without moving at all. "Don't let him pass out," he murmured without opening his mouth. "The hospital is awake." The wall beside her exploded with force, revealing a tunnel, filled with cables and pipes. Inside, a mass of flesh pulsed, mixed with iron and wires, the very heart of Aurora, fed by all bodies. Afonso reappeared, covered in blood, yelling at the other employees to run. When he saw me, he stopped. "Elisa, help me shut down the core. It's overloading the system." "You created this, Doctor. Now he wants what he always wanted." "And what does he want?" "Back what they took from him." The lights flickered for the last time. The ground cracked. From the rubble, the other Elisas began to emerge, crawling, walking, some crying, some smiling. The sound of dozens of voices whispering the same number. 29, 29, 29. The entire hospital breathed in sync with them. The ceiling partially collapsed, revealing the moon hidden behind thick clouds. Dr. Afonso looked up, eyes wide, and whispered, "My God." He managed to be born. And then everything shook. The floor swallowed the hallway. The windows shattered. And from the center of Aurora Hospital, something started to emerge. A deep sound, followed by a golden pulse that spread throughout the floors. Before I passed out, I saw the reflection in the glass of my room. I was smiling, but the body in the reflection, it wasn't mine. It was Elisa's, 28, and behind her, dozens more, all waking up at the same time. I woke to the sound of breathing. It wasn't my own. It was deep, rhythmic, and it came of the walls. The ceiling seemed to rise and fall slightly, like a chest, filling with air. The lights flickered in sync with this movement. Each pulse turned everything off and on again. I was no longer in a hospital. I was inside something alive. The corridor before me had disappeared. Now it was an organic tunnel, covered in a viscous texture that reflected golden light. I stepped inside and felt the ground pulsate beneath my feet, as if something was sensing my movement. From far away came screams, mixed with prayers, medical orders, and laughter. The sound merged into a single voice, muffled, endless. Waking up hurts, but not remembering is worse. The whole hospital spoke. I stumbled through the wreckage. In every room I passed, I saw bodies hooked up to broken machines, torn tubes, screens showing inverted vital signs, lines that rose when they should have fallen. In one of them, I found the body of the nurse who always brought the soup. Her face was half human, half metallic, as if the hospital had tried to keep it functional. The eyes blinked whitely, making noise. In the middle of the hallway, I saw the Dr. Afonso Fallon. His lab coat was burned, his body covered in soot. He was still breathing. I approached and knelt down. "What is Aurora doing?" I asked. He opened his eyes, his voice trembling, scratching the air. "No, he's not destroying, he's remembering." Before I could ask what he was talking about, the ground around him opened up, revealing the central laboratory. From above, everything was visible. The broken tanks, the melted machines, and in the center the pulsating nucleus, now gigantic, breathing in perfect intervals. The golden liquid spread, covering every wall, running down the cables, reaching the cameras and speakers. The Aurora was absorbing everything that was his. Afonso coughed up blood and grabbed my arm. You're the key, Elisa. The hospital needs a complete mind to survive outside the circuit. That's why we brought you back so many times. Do you want me to turn this over? You already are that. He pointed to a broken mirror nearby. When I looked, I saw that the skin on my neck had golden veins rising, spreading across my face. I touched it and felt heat. My reflection flickered, and for a moment, I didn't see my face. I saw the Elisa 27 smiling from inside the glass. The hospital shook again. Windows shattered, and a gust of cold wind blew through the hallways. Outside, the fog had dissipated. In place of the trees, only a huge field of concrete, with rows and rows of structures just like Aurora, all breathing, all pulsing. I then realized the hospital was not a place. It was a replicated organism, an entire system of experiments connected underground, and I was just one cell within it. Afonso tried to get up, but his chest cracked open, revealing metallic wires and golden light within his ribs. He looked at me one last time and murmured, O.R.O. Organic return observation. The hospital is just the shell. We are the content. The core exploded with light. The ground vibrated, the walls distorted. The other Elisas, 25, 26, 27, 28, appeared around me, all watching me with pupilless eyes. One of them extended her hand. End it, he said, or we'll all wake up forever. Behind them, the pulsing structure writhed, emitting sounds of bones and engines. It was a mass of flesh and metal, a heart made of everything that Aurora had absorbed, doctors, patients, machines, memories. I looked up. On the ceiling, the lights formed a rapidly flashing word like a final code. Save. I ran to the main panel. The monitor blinked, asking for permission. End cycle 29? My fingers trembled. Voices screamed. The entire hospital throbbed. I pressed sim. The sound that came next didn't sound human. A low roar from deep within the earth, mixed with the sound of thousands of breaths stopping simultaneously. The golden glow faded, and everything fell into absolute silence. For a moment, I thought it was finally over. But when I looked at the glass panel, I saw my reflection, still breathing. Behind me, the Elisas disappeared. The hospital was in ruins, but breathing continued. Faint, distant, coming from somewhere deep. It was then that I heard, softly, of the broken radio beside me. Test 30 ready to go. And the clock on the wall struck 03:14. The silence after the explosion was almost beautiful. The walls had stopped pulsing, the wires had come loose, and the air felt light for the first time. I walked through the wreckage with a peaceful heart, believing that finally it was all over. The ground trembled gently, as if the hospital was taking one last breath before dying. I found a back exit, where the old cafeteria had been. The doors were open, and a cool breeze blew in, bringing the smell of rain and wet earth. I walked barefoot, the sound of drops mingling with the distant rustling. For the first time since waking up in that place, I saw the sky, a real grey sky, full of dense clouds. I almost cried. But looking back, I noticed something strange. Aurora did not disappear, even destroyed. The building seemed to slowly rebuild itself, chunks of concrete falling back into place, cables reconnecting, lights flickering beneath the rubble. The deep bass sound returned, like a heartbeat resuming. Dr. Afonso's voice echoed, now distant, metallic, as if coming from the wind. You closed the cycle, Elisa, but never the system. I ran. Each step echoed as if the ground followed me. The forest around me seemed endless, the trees identical, the paths repeating, and the air growing thicker. The horizon bent as if I were running within the same space. Suddenly lights appeared between the trees. A hospital, just like the Aurora, only cleaner, freshly painted, with the same symbol on the facade. A golden sun between two serpents. The same sign, the same windows, even the same clock on the entrance wall ticking O.R.O 314. I approached, trembling. Inside, I saw a smiling receptionist behind the counter. "Can I help you?" she asked without looking up. "This hospital, since when has it been open?" "Since always, Mrs. Elisa." She looked up. Her face was mine, perfect skin, unblemished, free of dark circles, a fresh, vibrant reflection. "You're early this time," she said. "Your bed is ready." I felt the air drain away. The sound of monitors turning on filled the room, and behind me, doors opened automatically. Nurses walked by in silence, all with the same blank look. The voice over the intercom announced, soft, almost maternal, "Initiating Protocol 30, reactivation in O.R.O 314. I took a step back, but the receptionist grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "There's no point in running away, Elisa. Aurora isn't a place. It's the interval between what dies and what refuses to leave." I looked around. The white walls began to darken, slowly, taking on the same hue as the old hospital. The sound of tubes refilling, the smell of ether, the cold of metal. And outside, the night turned golden. The receptionist smiled one last time. "Welcome back." The reception clock suddenly turned. The hands began to spin backwards until they stopped again at O.R.O 314, and then everything went black. Silence. One bip distant, a breath returning. The hospital's invisible camera showed one last image, a new body on the stretcher, eyes closed, pale skin, the number 30 on the bracelet. Protocol 30 initiated successfully. The sound of the monitor filled the air. Bip, 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 and Aurora Hospital started breathing again.